Hey fellow tennis nerds, sorry if this video is a little bit dark. I usually shoot during the day, but the days are shorter now. Darkness comes a little bit faster even here in sunny Malta, so and I don't have the best lighting yet. I'm trying to find studio lights and stuff, but you need to order everything abroad. There's nothing here locally, so everything is a little bit more of a hassle. Usually fine because I record in the daylight, but not today. I wanted to talk about 1820 pattern rackets, control-oriented rackets on the market today. I picked out 3 for this video, a comparison about 3 rackets that are very topical, very hot, so to say, pretty recent releases in all cases. There's also the Technifiber TF40 that we'll talk a little bit about, and the Pure Strike Generation 3 1820. Maybe there's a racket I've forgotten about that you might remind me, and that will be something for a future video, maybe for a Q&A session. So if you have questions, please refer to the Q&A sessions that I'm gonna do weekly. So the 3 rackets I wanna mainly talk about, the one I hit with today, that's what the basis of this video, is the Blade 98 version 8 1820. As you know, there's a 1619 and there's an 1820. The 1820 has a slightly higher swing weight, but still, compared to the other rackets I will talk about, this one is a little bit lighter, easier to swing. It's 305 grams strung, it has a 21.5 millimeter beam, which is a little bit thicker than more control-oriented patterns that are around 20 millimeter beam. And but the stiffness is pretty low, it's around low 60, so pretty flexible frame, good for the arm if you're worried about that. Nice feel, nice sensation, not a power weapon by any means, but these are control rackets. The 1820 pattern is mainly for control-oriented rackets. It's always been like that, and many pros swear by them, many recreational players swear by them, although today the 1619 pattern in a kind of 98 or 100 square inch racket is the most common. So these 1820s are not as common anymore, but they're still very, very popular. And many legends of the racket industry, like the Head Pro Tour and other frames, have been 1820, like the 6195 for example. But the Blade is the lightest racket I will talk about today at 305 grams. 1820 rackets are usually a little bit heavier, a little bit more focused on control. You need a bit more weight then to also get good stability. So very nice frame, this one. The whippiest of the bunch, really enjoyed hitting with it today. And it's a frame I keep taking out from time to time. I'm kind of going in between this one and the 1619. I like them both. Not sure which one I like the most, to be honest, but I get a little bit more free spin potential or a slightly higher launch angle with the 1619. So probably a little bit easier to use, but they're pretty similar in the playability. Easier to get good swing speed and easier to be a bit late on the ball sometimes, and you can whip up and adjust a bit quicker because it's a fair bit lighter racket. So yeah, easier to use for sure. Decent control, quite as precise, but kind of nice in the middle racket for players looking for control. I think this is one of the better ones, 1820 V8 Blade 98. The other one is a recently reviewed Prestige Pro. This was previously called MP, but it's now called the Pro. It's an 1820 pattern, but the weight is the difference here. So it has a very thin beam and not much power generally. Stiffness very similar to the Blade, but it's 320 grams. So it's a little bit tougher to swing, but also a little bit more stability. I would say the pattern is a little bit tighter as well. So this one is ultra controlled, more of a feel racket, more of a precision racket even than the Blade. The Blade is more of that kind of control, but slightly more modern control racket. While this one is old school, low flex, tight string bed, same head size as the Blade, but just that thin beam that many kind of more traditional players or players who enjoy older rackets usually like. And this one is one of my favorite rackets in recent years. I've used the red version, which is very similar to this new one. It has a new technology, but I think that mimics pretty well with the previous edition. And yeah, very sweet frame that I like a lot. But I noticed today that when I was playing with it, I didn't really quite get the same power as I do with the Blade. Has a slightly thicker beam, a little bit more maneuverable. I can swing it a little bit faster. This one I struggled to get the swing speed up, and the newer Prestiges seem to have a little bit higher swing weight than the predecessors, which is something I'm not 100% sure about what I feel about it, because it's a little bit more to swing, and I'm trying to get a bit more whippier and more fast racket head speed. and then the Prestige is just too cumbersome for my game. I can't really make it move as fast as some other rackets. The older Prestige had a lower swing weight. I could whip it a little bit more. This one has though a higher swing weight, with giving it a more natural power and stability, but the swing speed is definitely lower. But yeah, this is more of a precision weapon than the Blade. The Blade is a control frame that still remains relatively user-friendly, I would say. Very tough to get any power from the Prestige. You have to put everything yourself. If your technique or footwork is not perfect, it's kind of tough to play with. Yes, you get the precision, you get the control, drop shots and volleys, fantastic, but overall very heavy, quite tough to get it right. You don't get the same free power with the VCore Pro 97 HD, for example, so you need to put in more work for sure. And yeah, we're not always up for the task. I'm speaking from my own experience here, that it's not that easy to always be on your game. But yeah, it's a great stick. I mean, fantastic. Put it in the hands of a pro, I think they can play well, but the hands of a you know, advanced amateur, whatever you want to call it, is still quite difficult to use. Moving over to a Yonex frame, this is the VCore Pro 97D. D used to be HD, is the high density pattern, tight string pattern. What saves Yonex for these frames is the isometric head shape, a little bit more squared off here, makes the profile a little bit different of the frame. It's supposed to give a larger sweet spot. I usually notice that with Yonex frames. Doesn't necessarily mean they're better, but this is also kind of this very traditional racket, 21mm beam, and just a very solid frame. And this one comes in at 320 gram like the Prestige MP, but this one is more powerful. I felt like I get more power with this frame, and the Yonex rackets usually play a little bit more like a head size, maybe 1 or 2 square inches bigger. So this one plays more like a 98, I would say 99 maybe even, than the 97 that it says it is. So very similar to the Prestige MP in specs, but a little bit more power. I think also the isometric head shape gives you a bit more spin potential, but not everyone loves the isometric. I do struggle a little bit, more of a racket traditionalist, as some of you might know, and I do tend to prefer the more traditional head shape if you compare them like this. And I get more power with the Yonex, but I kind of prefer how this one flows through the air. So, but it's a matter of taste. Super nice frames, both of them. All these 3 rackets are top-notch frames for players looking for control. Just excellent, all of them. I would say on the power level, this one has the lowest power. This one is in the middle, and the Blade has probably the most power and the easiest whippy feel, I would say. But yeah, it's quite slight, all these differences. These are definitely heavier though, so the Blade is easier to use. Very nice frames, all 3 of them. If I would play a tournament tomorrow, I'd pick the Blade because that's the one that I can swing the fastest. But all of them have really good feel. I think the touch of them go to the Prestige. Really super nice touch, drop shots, everything. And the sweet spot size goes to the VCore, but it's a little bit more muted. So I hope that gives you an idea of these 3 rackets that are all 1820 control frames. I also want to mention, alright, so the VCore Pro 97 HD, 1820 pattern, more power than the Prestige, more power than the Blade, similar weight to the Prestige. Nice racket, very similar to the predecessor, as I said in my review. Please check that out. But yeah, many people will find the swing weight a little bit too much. I kind of like this one, and it's strung with Polytor Rev, the lavender version, which is a decent combination. Probably prefer the Polytor Pro a little bit more than the Polytor Rev, but that's another story. Other 1820 rackets that have a slightly different feel to them. Start with the Technifiber TF40, now on sale on Tennis Warehouse Europe, and it's quite cheap price. One of the racket consultations I did a while back, he contacted me the other day and said, you know, should I buy one? And I just replied, yes, it's a nice stick, and he bought 2. So hopefully he likes them. No idea, but that with that price, you should be able to resell them, which I usually do if I don't like the racket. So the Technifiber TF40 gives you a little bit more power than the Blade. It's a little bit stiffer, a little bit thicker beam, a little bit different through the air in that sense. Still a nice, quite plush, but modern feeling string bed. I find it a little bit lively. I mean, I used to really love that frame, but it gets a little bit lively at times, I feel. I don't feel quite the control that I like, but it's still a very nice frame. It's a frame to go for if you like the Blade 98 V7 or V8. 1820, but you want to get a bit more power, then that's the frame that's in the same weight category, but still gives you a little bit extra help on the ball. And if you want even more help than that, you go to the Pure Strike 98 1820. This is more of a attacking weapon. It has a thick beam, like most Babolat's frames. It's quite powerful for its 98 square inch head size and 1820 pattern, but that's due to the high stiffness, thick beam, but also for this generation 3, the high swing weight. So that's a little bit more of a weapon, but can also aggravate some elbows with the stiffness. Maybe not a huge concern for everyone, but something to keep in mind if you have suffered from tennis elbow or kind of wrist issues and stuff. But that one gives you the most power of all these 1820 patterns. I know the Wilson Ultra Pro, now part of the Pro Labs series. That one is definitely more of a control frame, really low power, needs weight to get more stability. It just feels great, but you need to be able to customize it a bit, because it won't play as stable and as solid as the Blade 98 V8. But it has a lot of room for customization if you like heavier frames. So that's a good option if you want a frame that is kind of 315, 320 grams, but you need a bit more weight. There is the Prince Extreme Tour 100P that has an 1820 pattern. Still, that's more of a going towards tweener direction, a little bit more power, a little bit more forgiveness. Not quite as controlled as these frames. Still a nice frame, definitely worth checking out, but you're going more towards the tweener, the more powerful frame category with that stick. And another 1820 frame, a part of the Wilson Pro Labs, is the 6195 1820. That one is very heavy, quite cumbersome to swing, not the biggest spin potential because of the 95 square inch head size, but just as solid as a rock and pummels through the ball like a tank if you can get it moving. Problem is, can you get it moving? I think that's the question. But it all depends on your style. If you like a slower swing, you're playing with a slower swing and you like a heavy frame, that's fine. I'm trying to get more racket head speed and a bit more top spin on my shots. So for me, I'm going lighter. I'm going a little bit more powerful so I can swing, while some players like still heavy traditional frames, but I'm moving slowly away from that. Another frame I should mention, the Head Pro Tour 2.0 and the reissue of the legendary Head Pro Tour. Talked about that tons and tons on this channel. It's a great frame, very low powered, the most low powered of all these sticks, but also the one that gives you the best control. Just a brilliant controlled stick. It will definitely force you to be honest with yourself on the court, because you'll see what kind of pace you can generate on the ball. But if you have no problems generating a lot of power on your shots and you want ultimate precision, the Head Pro Tour 2.0 is as good as it gets, pretty much. A few other 1820 sticks that deserve to be mentioned are the Gravity Pro, the Gravity Tour, and the Speed Pro as well. But the Speed Pro is more of a tweener frame, more like the Prince Extreme Tour 100P, so I don't really put that in the control frame category. While the Gravity Pro, I've compared that to the Prestige MP, with being slightly more generous with the sweet spot and slightly more power. But yeah, it's quite a lot to swing because of the wide head size. I've talked about the Gravity Pro before. Please search the channel if you need to see more comparison of the Gravity Pro. That's a great stick. I've said that over and over again, but it depends kind of on your playing style. I find it a little bit cumbersome for me to swing fast, but for many players it's just a great frame. And there's also the Gravity Tour, which is the lighter version. I don't really find the same kind of control from the Gravity Tour, which has a thicker beam. I find it a little bit tougher to know where the ball is in the string bed with the Gravity Tour. It is a little bit more like a Blade in its power profile. I would say it's a bit more forgiving, a bit more playability, not the super control, but not bad either. But in this case, I probably prefer the Blade because of its faster feel through the air and so on. There's also the Dunlop CX200 Tour, which is a very control-oriented frame, 95 square inches, ultra whippy. I think it needs some customization, although it's a lot of fun to hit because it's super whippy. But with some weight on it, I think it plays better and more stable. But that also comes in 1619 and 1820, the 1820 being my favorite. Very solid, nice stick. I actually played with the predecessor for quite a while. One of my favorite frames I played in the recent 5 years, I think. So those ones also deserve a mention. Actually excellent sticks, the CX200 Tour series. So those are some 1820 sticks on the market right now. If you want to purchase any of them or anything else, please consider doing so through my affiliates, Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Warehouse Europe, and Tennis Only. And if you want to support the work I do, you want to ask questions, something like that, please join Patreon, patreon.com/tennisnerd. As I've said before, I don't have time to answer all your questions. Sadly, I would love to, but I don't have time. I get emails, messages, everything every day. So it's better if you join Patreon, where it's easier to keep track of messages, and you also have to pay a little bit, which helps me. So win-win, I think. Or if you ask them on YouTube, when you're a subscriber, you're going to have a priority to get your questions selected for the week's Q&A. So that's also a recommendation. So if you have questions, please do that. The racket consultation service is on pause. Not exactly sure when it will be back. I'm super busy, sadly, but at some point I will bring it back in some form. That's all I can say right now. I'm trying to work on it. I'm a one-man band, so it's not that easy at the moment, but I will get back to it at some point. Well, that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Which 1820 stick of the ones I mentioned would you use? Let me know in the comments below. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.